Welcome, beautiful people of all ages, shapes, and colors, to another episode of the Hit Your Free Throws podcast, where we encourage you to stick to the basics. I'm one of your co-hosts, TV, aka TV on Basketball, alongside my co-host, Jay, aka the Knockdown Jay. How's it going, my guy?
TV is fire, my boys. Free agency is starting to calm down. We got some big names still sitting out in the pond, waiting to get picked up by a team. Summer League's been low-key kind of fire. Bro, the NBA just never knows how to stop, does it?
Yeah, no, bro. I didn't even mention this to you about the summer league, but bro, my Raptors freaking defeated your Bulls by like 40 the other night.
Bro, 8 bajillion turnovers, dog. I don't know what to tell you. Just could not keep the ball in hand.
I watched that entire game. 8 assists to 33 turnovers was nasty work, and I'm telling you right now, bro, Elijah Martin's going to be one of the best second-round picks of like recent memory. I'm telling you right here, right now, Elijah Martin's going to be that guy. But yeah, no, locking into the summer league, we really let like free agency and like this offseason really breathe just so we can get through all of the moves. Like Jay said, everything's calmed down. So now, and I mean now, we're going to go through, the best signings, most underrated stuff, basically all things offseason starting now. And then, of course, Jay, I think you kind of like teased it last week in the episode with Marcus. Top fives coming soon with the point guard, shooting guards, the position rankings, all that stuff. So it's going to be a great summer. We're going to start off here with the offseason recap episode, basically. So it's going to be a good episode, and we want you to be tuning into all of that. So, yeah, make sure you like sit back, relax, and enjoy. But before we get into that, we do have to plug our socials. Make sure you follow our individual socials at TV on Basketball, at The Routine Jumper. Those links can be found in the description down below. In terms of the Hit Your Free Throws podcast, make sure you follow us on TikTok and Instagram for the best daily NBA content. You got the clips, you got the series, you got the recaps, you got the news updates. All that stuff can be found on the Hit Your Free Throws TikTok and Instagram pages. In terms of the podcast networks, remember to subscribe, leave a review if you're on Spotify or Apple. We appreciate all of you guys' support there. And in terms of YouTube, remember to like, share, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you will not miss an episode. That's where you can find all the video content. It's gonna we're gonna have another couple. We're gonna post some of the new segments as Jay has kind of like teased in the past. We're gonna be like posting kind of segments of the show. So if you can't like watch the whole episode, we're gonna have different segments going on throughout the week. So make sure you check that out as well. Jay, are you ready to get into this? There's a lot of offseason content to kind of cover here.
Yeah, man, a lot of guys have signed to some interesting spots, been traded to some interesting teams since the last time we recorded, as well as just a couple of things that we didn't really get to discuss in the early stages of free agency. Again, still some names out there. Chris Paul, Russell Westbrook, Josh Giddey, Jonathan Kuminga, Quentin Grimes. There's still a handful of decent names out there. Cam Thomas is another one as well. Like, there's a good handful of names still floating around, but the names that did land in spots, TV, are starting to bring some of these teams together really nicely. I'm excited to hear some of the guys that you want to point out, because I got some interesting guys on my list, which means I know that you got some heaters, because usually we tend to have different guys in mind, but the philosophy is still the same, that there's going to be some underrated heaters on this one.
100%, man. And I mean, Shams, guys, I feel like Shams like put us like all in like this like sort of headspace like before free agency started, that there's going to be the craziest offseason ever. It hasn't been that just yet. I mean, like, obviously there's still a lot of offseason to go, but it's still been pretty like interesting, and there's a lot of stuff we have to cover. Obviously, we can't cover every offseason move, so the ones that we didn't mention, make sure you leave it down in the comment section below. But basically, we've done this with certain episodes in the past where we basically try to answer some of the biggest offseason kind of talk about the biggest moves through the form of questions, and that's what we're gonna do in this episode. Going to ask Jay a couple questions, and we're going to go back and forth talking about what our answers would be for each of these questions. And Jay, I'm going to start off with this first question here, plain and simple. What has been your favorite, or what do you think is the best offseason move / signing so far?
So I think, obviously, most people are going to point to Kevin Durant or Desmond Bane, like the bigger names, right, that first get established when you talk about just coming in and instantaneously impacting a team by their on-ball presence, their star power, whatever the case may be. Obviously, Desmond Bane, Kevin Durant, different tier, but still guys that are going to produce day one for their teams in a way that people kind of already understand. To me, personally, though, I think when you talk about best signing, you're talking about a guy that you can bring in when you're not talking about all-stars, obviously, or if you're not talking about star caliber players. You're talking about bringing in a guy that when you sign them, they instantly can contribute to your team in a real way, but not necessarily in a way that disrupts the flow of what you're building moving forward, right? So I think one of the more interesting pickups of the summer actually has to do with a team like I'm not sure if I want to use this one now just yet, because you know how I can get with these, but I'm gonna do it now. I'm actually gonna do it now. I think that the Cleveland Cavaliers getting Lonzo Ball is ridiculous, dude. I think that Lonzo Ball as a signing for the Cleveland Cavaliers is kind of crazy because, again, I know that we have to play the win healthy game with a guy like Lonzo, but Lonzo is kind of the walking version of what they pretty much want, outside of the fact that he's not necessarily a natural three, but he is a natural 3-and-D style point guard. He fits like in the similar mold of what we were able to see from Dyson Daniels last season, just a better 3-point shooter, right? And I think he's a guy that when you look at what the Cleveland Cavaliers have been able to do in the past, running out lineups that start Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, and then Max Strus usually at the 3, right? Or they've had Karis LeVert at the 3. You know, they've been in these situations where they've had undersized guards essentially step in and play that 3 position. Lonzo Ball, as from a build perspective, at what, 6'6", 6'7", actually might be the closest build-wise to actually being able to step in as like a third guard / wing option for them and provide real defensive versatility. He's a dude who brings in, you know, more transition opportunity, as well as a high-level passer that pokes in passing lanes and then knows how to push the ball up court. He's another ball handler, so that takes the pressure off of guys like Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland to have to initiate offense. He's a really good decision maker. He knows how to play next to 2-star guards. We've seen him play next to Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan in the past. He also just knows how to play next to stars in general, especially lob threat options. He played with Zion Williamson. Imagine what he could do next to a guy like Jared Allen, who could just stand next to the rim and just be available as a rim running threat. Like Lonzo Ball, although it's like a very low key thing because he's a guy that you always have to attach the win healthy with, he literally addresses their biggest need, which is a versatile wing player who can guard multiple positions. With Lonzo has shown the ability to guard 1 through 4 in small ball situations. He's guarded Julius Randle, for Christ's sake, at one point back when he was playing for the Bulls. This is a guy who can guard 1 through 4, has real defensive versatility, brings up-tempo speed on offense as a guy who can initiate both in space, in the half court, in transition. And then you top all of that off with the fact that he does give you high-level 3-point shooting. This is a guy who takes like 6 or 7 3-point attempts per game and can hit like a cool 37, 38% clip. That's everything you want in a 3 / another, you know, additional guy in the starting lineup next to Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell. And they get it on a cheap deal for Lonzo, who's an expiring contract very soon.
No, I think that's just like the perfect move. I mean, you talk about the freaking like we talked about this, I think, in an episode prior. The Bulls love to make these moves where they wait for a guy to go on the final year of his deal and just trade him for like a 1-for-1 swap. Last year was Josh Giddey. And I know people are going to say, oh, Josh Giddey actually looked like a borderline all-star at the end of last season. We saw this guy get like 6 to 15 minutes per game as part of the OKC Thunder the year prior in the playoffs. So you could clearly tell that he wasn't in their offseason plans. So what did the OKC Thunder do? They got one of the most vital pieces to their championship team in Alex Caruso. And I think the Cavs are doing something as like a light version of this. I mean, Isaac Okoro was a freaking starter for this team just 2 years ago. And
exactly.
They they were using Isaac Okoro to their wits' end, to the point where he didn't even play basically in the playoffs for a lot of the time because he just couldn't shoot the basketball, and the defense that wasn't really the focus here because you needed some more offense on the floor. What does Lonzo Ball do? We've seen when he's healthy, and of course the caveat is always with Lonzo Ball if he's healthy. But we've seen in the season before he got injured, became a 40% 3-point shooter. It's still one of the an above average passer in the league. Like if you give him time with the ball, he's still going to be a dynamic passer in this high powered Cleveland Cavaliers offense. Then you mix it to the fact, like you mentioned, he's freaking 6'7". You could play him at the point guard and shooting guard position, and at times at the 3 if you want to end games like that. He's just so versatile in that sense, and kind of like how Alex Caruso was for the Thunder. Jay, remember, he didn't play that much in the regular season. If you really need to load manage him, take care of him minutes to make sure that he's healthy come playoff time, you could do that. And they got decent backup options because they selected Tyrese Proctor as a second round, who's someone I'm a big fan of, but could also fill that big point guard role as being a 6'5" guy. Maybe he'll spend some time in the G League, but I really think as one of those older rookies, he can provide some really good minutes for the Cavs if given the opportunity. So I think they did a really good job here of, yes, you're trading a young guy, Isaac Okoro, someone you invested a lot of time and energy into, but clearly after 4 or 5 years with him, that wasn't going to go anywhere. He wasn't even cracking a playoff rotation. So getting someone like Lonzo Ball with the intent in mind of having him be part of that playoff rotation, probably being I mean, obviously replacing the Ty Jerome role, which he left to go to the Memphis Grizzlies. I
Yeah.
think that it's just such a good low risk, high reward sort of scenario. And if Lonzo Ball, hopefully he stays healthy, could get, like you said, could be the exact player that the Cavs need. Just filling out either in their closing lineup or just being that backup guard when you know that Darius Garland is going to miss some time for sure.
True, definitely. I think he's one of those that, and maybe I overextended best, but I also think in terms of the value that he brings to a team that's already got significantly high championship aspirations. I think being the cherry on top for an offseason for a team like this, that let's be honest, the Cleveland Cavaliers probably have one more season, and in particular, a season like this one going into next year where the Eastern Conference is as wide open as it possibly could be, and they're projected to be the top team coming out the East, with teams like the New York Knicks and the Orlando Magic probably like right behind them in terms of the betting standards. The Cleveland Cavaliers probably only have one more real season of being formulated the way they are now before we're going to see a significant shock throughout their roster. So this next move being the Lonzo Ball one, I think addresses their biggest need, but also kind of is their last shot in the dark to really kind of solidify this championship window that they're aiming for with this core that they have, this core four. Because let's be real, this upcoming season might be the most important Cleveland Cavalier year, non-LeBron related, obviously, that we've
Yes, no,
seen in
no,
quite
100%.
some time.
Yeah, because to be honest here, we were definitely a little bit disappointed with the way things ended last year, especially the way that they went down to the Indiana Pacers. They need to bounce back big, and they've invested in this core for a long time now. And if they don't go on this run, especially with a hobbled Eastern Conference, there's going to be some major question marks with this team going forward. 100%. Jay, my favorite move, and I think I'm going to kind of classify this as kind of a group of moves because I'm just so happy with what this team did in this offseason.
Okay.
Yo, the Denver Nuggets reloaded nicely.
Yo,
Denver
for
Nuggets
real,
reloaded.
dog.
Jay, how they are the Oklahoma City Thunder of this offseason. Because how do you get better in the way the Denver Nuggets did and save money? You saved money in this offseason. Jay, they sent out Michael Porter Jr. They brought in Cam Johnson, Tim Hardaway Jr., Bruce Brown, and you traded a non-factor in Dario Saric for a guy, and mind you, it took a while for him to get here. Jonas Valanciunas. Valanciunas. It probably took some convincing and stuff like that, but he is there as a member of the Denver Nuggets. Jay, they saved money. They saved like $17 million by like, in a way, in my opinion, Jay, and this is just my opinion, I think they upgraded from Michael Porter Jr. to Cam Johnson, especially in terms
I agree as well.
Especially with fit on the team. Like an absolute upgrade with Cam Johnson. They bring back the guy in Bruce Brown, they didn't want to lose in the first place. We talk about how much like his presence was missed over these last couple of years for them. They finally get good backup center minutes, which when was the last time we had good backup center minutes with a Nikola Jokic team? You have him and Jay. Not to mention, De'Ron Holmes is coming back from his ACL injury from this past year. They were hoping for him to be a backup center. So if he can like take another year to develop and have JV on the squad, they actually have legitimate center depth now, which is something you can't say about the Nuggets over these past few years. And of course, you bring in Tim Hardaway Jr., which you needed an offensive punch off the bench. You save money. You have assets now. Man, I just think that especially with getting rid of that Michael. I mean, we looked at Michael Porter Jr. at the end of the season as kind of a negative asset. Yes, he was still a young player, but making almost $40 million a year for the type of production that he was giving out was not good. So where do you dump him to a place? A place with the team where they have only cap room right now, and a team that's willing to take him as a chance as like a number 1 or 2 option, and that is the Brooklyn Nets. So you upgrade your team immensely. You just sign a bunch of guys to, low vet minimum deals. You make a move for a backup center. Jay, this Nuggets team just got better, and the depth that we've been so long missing for this team has finally been addressed. They saved some money. I am very happy with what the Denver Nuggets have done, and I'm very excited to see what they're going to do this upcoming season.
Yeah, adding significant three-point shooting for their team, defensive versatility, adding center depth, like you said. In a sense, they got a 2-for-1 this summer in terms of adding to that. Like you said, by bringing in De'Ron Holmes back from injury, who's looked pretty solid throughout Summer League. Not too much of a crazy sample size, but at least it showed more so his skill set on the offensive end more than his defensive ability around the rim. But still, that's fine because, hey, there's going to be situations where now he can be able to provide offense off the bench when Nikola Jokic takes a sit for, his 3 to 4 minutes a game. You have
Yeah,
JV as another guy who can kind of be another body. You know that he's not the most durable, but he's a guy that sets hard screens. He's a guy that can be a good play finisher, high-level rebounder, and that's all you need. That's all you've ever needed behind
yeah,
Jokic, right? Is a guy who could just eat up those minutes properly without completely being a turnstile as a rim defender, right? That's all you really
yes.
want. That's all
You
you
don't
really
even need
want.
20 minutes from him. You just need like a good 15 minutes because Jokic is going to play
Yeah,
majority of the game anyway. So it's just
right.
perfect
And
time. Perfect, yeah.
yeah, you're coming off of a year where Tim Hardaway Jr. had one of his best 3-point best 3-point percentage years in terms of just what he was able to do in comparison with his volume. You add that with Cam Johnson, who again spreads the floor. You give him another knockdown 3-point shooter. Aaron Gordon has obviously improved as a 3-point shooter from year to year over time. So now you have a lineup that you can run out where let's say the predicted starting lineup is Jamal Murray, Christian Brown, Cam Johnson, Cam Johnson, Aaron Gordon, and Nikola Jokic. And you got the nerve to still have Bruce Brown on the bench, JV on the bench. You still have a situation where you can bring in Tim Hardaway as
Julius,
your two. Like Julius Strawther gets another chance to be able to improve and step in at that 3 position and continue to like build off of what last season was as an offensive guy. Like
yeah,
this is a team that went from our biggest question for them coming into the offseason was, where are they going to get the depth from while being this broke financially, right? In terms of
yeah,
being able to go out and make signings. Dude, I mean, they basically fleshed the bench out like the first week of free agency.
yeah.
I
Dude,
mean,
that's the
dang.
thing. Yeah, no, 100%. I'm just glad that they were able to kind of get that sorted because that has been just ever since the championship year, just like slowly but surely, just deteriorating. And they're like, man,
Yeah,
Jokic made these guys a bunch of money, but they just can't retain them. But now they've been
yeah,
able to like get the flexibility needed. And look, moves might not be done. I mean, they still have Zeke Naji on the freaking roster. Like they don't know like what his like situation is long term. He has like an $8 billion cap hit. So
mm,
being able to, especially that center position with the freaking JV and like Deron Holmes combo now, you can like. There's not gonna be times where you can look at Jonas at like Jokic on the bench saying, "Guys, just give me some help, just some sort of help," like him like yelling on the bench and that sort of stuff. Like I just think that they've made just like a collection of just great signings and guys that are just like either just know how to like play in playoff slash like contending team scenarios. When you look like a
mm,
team like when you look at Bruce Brown obviously being part of the championship, Cam Johnson being on the finals team there in Phoenix, Tim Hardaway Jr. just being in a playoff situation last year, providing great minutes there for the Detroit Pistons, and of course Jonas just being in the league for such a long time. Like perfect moves, didn't break the bank, obviously saved more from like just making the move in general. You got to look at them and say, man, that group of signings, like this Denver Nuggets team is ready to compete once again. And Nikola Jokic might just be on his way to another MVP season if the Nuggets can like keep up.
yeah, they've definitely positioned them in a real way. It'll be interesting to see if they can do something at backup point guard. Russell Westbrook is obviously still floating around there. Some of
He
the
could
more
still come
notable
back.
names is
Could
kind of
still come
set.
back.
There's always a
Yeah.
chance that he could end up coming on a very team-friendly deal, given the fact that Denver doesn't have too much more flexibility left. But I think that's really the last, like
Last kiss.
dot on the I they got to kind of get done. It's just getting a solid backup point guard to kind of get it all settled down. But I mean, you still have again Christian Brown and Bruce Brown can be high level ball handlers. I think Cam Johnson can be a guy who can
Aiden
help
Watson, we
initiate
even mentioned
offense.
him coming off the bench still. Yeah.
Yeah, as a defensive versatile guy, I think he's going to be a dude that can come off the bench and still fit in between lineups as well. Like I think the only thing they really need left is a guy who could just be a backup ball handler for them. That would just be the most interesting thing left to be able to achieve. But if they can do that, even if it's on a lower scale level, I think just being able to have that depth at point guard is the only thing they're missing. But I do think it's important given the fact that, Jamal Murray tends to be a guy that you have to worry about the ebbs and flows of the season, not just from his performance perspective, but also just from a health perspective. He is a guy that you have to
Yeah.
worry about even being able to qualify for All NBA and playing 65 games or more. So having a backup point guard that can keep things steady might be the last thing they really need to do. But Denver, for what they had available, I think this is very funny because you have to phrase it in a way that also like skews towards understanding what their situation was. For what they had available, they did not miss. Like at
They knocked
any
out the
step of the
park.
way. Yeah,
Knocked
they
the
did not
entire offense
miss.
out of the park. 100%.
Mm-hmm.
Great moves for the Denver Nuggets. And just a fantastic offseason in general. Jay,
Yeah.
we're gonna move on to the next question though. What is the most questionable signing slash move that you see this offseason?
So I think we both kind of know what it is. It'll be interesting if we both decide to agree that this is definitely the most questionable, but what the hell is happening in Milwaukee, bro? Like, what is happening? And I would say, in conjunction to that, what the hell is happening in Indiana? How did Miles Turner end up with the ops? How did that happen? Like, how did that happen? And it was by a difference of like what, $5 to $7 million in terms of the per year offer. That's
Yeah.
insane work. They were trying to get my man's for 4 years, like 60, 70 million. He ended up signing for, I believe, 4 years, 104 or something along those lines.
Yes, it
But
was 4 years on 4. Yeah.
you have to look at it from both perspectives. For the Indiana Pacers, bro, you just came off of making the NBA Finals, and the only guy from the PG era that was left, he stays there. He builds with you for 10 years. You
Yeah.
get to the NBA Finals, and you go into one summer without your top level point guard, Tyrese Halliburton, but you still have Pascal Siakam, you still have Andrew Nembhard, you still have Ben Mathurin, and you just gave up. We were so worried about the Indiana Pacers signing significant center depth in case something with Miles Turner happened via trade. Once he got to the offseason, we thought, oh, he's about to bag out given what just happened over this last playoff
Yeah.
run. And you're still cherry picking. You're still cherry picking with this man. Years later, after we've seen him in trade talks after trade rumors, now we get to the chance where you have to really pay him. And he's coming off of arguably the best season in Indiana Pacers history, and definitely within the modern age. And that's when you really want to get the most picky about his money?
And
Crazy work.
that's the straw that broke the camel's back. And I think that's what ultimately happened because Miles Turner, like, I think like he had this said this, or I think like they talked about this, like I think one of the Pacers execs were talking about it.
Uh-huh.
How they gave the initial offer, the Milwaukee made his offer, and I think like Miles Turner, and this is the thing, right? This is like what happens when you put a man on the trade block for like 5+ years of his career. Like he like as much as like he's been such a loyalist to the Indiana Pacers, been there year after year since the PG era, like knowing that he's been on the trade block for how many years, like it makes you look at an organization differently. And after, like you mentioned, the best season in Indiana playoffs history, the fact that he had like big moments, sure he didn't maybe like show up massive in the finals. I know that some people were very disappointed in his performance, but all in all, like he had a fantastic season over there. Probably like his most effective, especially on a playoff stage. You would like expect if you're Miles Turner that after this historic season, that the Pacers would be right there at the start of free agency and offer you the contract you needed. And when he came through with that offer, like what was it? Like, I think a 4 year, $80-something million contract.
Yeah.
You're gonna feel slighted. You're gonna feel slighted
Yeah.
because like you've been put on the trade block. You've played good soldier for this many years, and now when it comes to like being a part of the best season of the franchise's career, you expect to be compensated as much. But they still lowballed him with the offer. I know the Pacers executives were saying that they were going to match the offer from the Bucks, but it's like you've seen in 2K, right? If you like offer too low money, they're just going to walk out the room because they felt insulted by the offer. And I think that's what
Yeah.
Miles Turner did. Like after all this time, after a decade of playing for this franchise, and you don't give me like market value, I don't care what if you match this next offer. I'm gonna be going to whoever pays me like what I need immediately, and that's what the Milwaukee Bucks
Yeah.
did.
Yeah,
Like
but then the
I don't think
opposite side
I
of it
don't
with
think he
the
doesn't give the Pacers a chance. He wouldn't give the Pacers a chance. And you know what? Rightfully fair enough, especially like with the way
yeah.
that they've been putting him on the trade block for this many years. What were you gonna say?
Yeah. Yeah. No, but I was gonna say then on the opposite side with the Milwaukee Bucks, wave and stretch Dame to make it
Oh,
happen.
that's a whole other scenario because like I will say this. There's one positive I say coming out of this, and it is that the Milwaukee Bucks know that in the next 25 years they're not going to get someone as good as Giannis. They're not. They're truly not going to get someone as good as Giannis. So they are pushing every single boundary. They are going to like make every single move possible to try and make this as competitive as possible. I know Dame is going to be like with the wave and switch thing. It's crazy. The people we think about this wave and stretch scenario. I think I talked to you about this on over text. Joakim Noah. Remember back when he was with the New York Knicks, he got the wave and stretch provision. Luol Deng Jay. We talked about it. How 3 years ago the Lakers stopped paying his contract. He got hit with the wave and stretch provision, and it's crazy to think that Damian Lillard is part of that list. This is the most money I think ever in NBA history that has
Yes.
ever been like just released into the market, which is crazy.
Yes.
And they have to pay 20+ million. So Damian Lillard's going to be 20 plus million, affecting their salary cap for the next 4 or 5 years.
Yes.
But everything about that is bad. Brian Windhorst said that this is just like incompetency to the highest level in terms of like tying your team down.
Yes.
But Jay, the only positive I will say about this, yes, they like use the money to get Miles Turner. They got Gary Trent Jr. on a very, very team friendly deal. I will say, 2 years, $7 million. That's great business.
Yeah.
But they are doing everything in their current power to keep Giannis Antetokounmpo. And as a small franchise, as a team of a small franchise, I can't help but respect it because you're not going to get someone as good as Giannis in this next 25 years. It took you 40 years to get someone as good as Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, as someone like as that sort of like superstar generational type player. So they're like,
Yeah.
we're not going to be we're probably post Giannis. We're not going to be great for a while. Let's
Yeah.
go all in on this time and F whatever happens next. I think that's what they're doing. I kind of respect it, but man, they're going to dig themselves a deep hole for the next few years, man. This is like they're going all in, and this team is not even that great. I'm telling you right now, this team is still not great, but I appreciate the effort.
I mean, dude, like you said, the question at the top of this was, what was the most questionable signing? For at least the next 2 seasons, you're basically paying $50 million for Miles Turner when you really
Yes.
look at it. Because what they had to
For the
do in
next
terms
4
of
years, you're paying $50 million because of the way they stretched Dame. So the
yeah,
next 4 seasons, you're basically paying like a 4-year, $200 million deal just for Miles Turner, which is insane.
just for Miles Turner. So when you're looking at the phrasing of it, not just being the worst or most disappointing, we're talking about questionable. We're talking about head scratching. Like, this is one of those where you made a signing that, from a fit perspective, Miles Turner slides right in. Can be really good as a guy that pretty much slides directly into where the Brook Lopez role is vacated from, as a guy that he went to the Clippers.
Brook Lopez for
right?
today. It's just a better Brook Lopez today. Yes.
The signing itself is fine. The deal itself is fine. The cap gymnastics they had to do to make it happen is where you have to ask yourself, at what cost? At what cost, bro?
It's a cause of keeping Giannis here, and they know they're not going to get someone as good as him in the next 20 years. So just go all in now. Who cares what happens?
But TV, then reports come out not even 24 hours later, Giannis Antetokounmpo is not happy with the releasing of Damian Lillard, which then puts you in position to potentially have to still worry about a Giannis Antetokounmpo trade request, which at the end of the day that the superstar puts the trade request in is the day the nail hits the coffin. You're supposed to trade the superstar before they make that play, because once they make that play, you no longer have control over what kind of package you truly can obtain for the kind of value that's on par with the player you're moving off of. And everybody and their mama, this is not like the Luka Doncic situation. This is very, very straightforward in a way that's been discussed for the last 2 to 3 years. Everyone and their mama knew that this was coming down the pipeline. We knew that they were not going to be able to financially make significant moves around Giannis Antetokounmpo. We knew that their team was getting significantly old with guys with Chris Middleton and Brook Lopez being dudes we were going to potentially see in different uniforms. Chris Middleton plays in Washington, for Christ's sake, and Brook Lopez had some different stuff not taking place, was supposed to be a Houston Rocket as of like last year, if people don't remember that, right? So this was something coming down the pipeline. TV, do you know who their starting point guard is? Talk about the Milwaukee Bucks going into next season. Do you know who their starting point guard is?
Yeah.
Kevin Porter Jr. Exactly. Yeah. And for everybody that got to see that on YouTube, yeah. Shout out to TV for doing exactly what everybody else is doing, thinking about top point guard rankings. Don't worry, if we go to 10, Kevin Porter Jr. will not be there. Don't worry. Like, dude, that goes to tell you their second best player on this team probably is Miles Turner. But at the expense of what? At the expense of what? This was probably your best opportunity, especially staring the Houston Rockets situation or the San Antonio Spurs situation in the face with guys like De'Aaron Fox as possible contributors, guys like Alperen Şengün or Amin Thompson. There's like so many different talents. And of course, you can still revisit the well with that because these guys still are going to be on these teams and these assets will still be at their peak right now. But, I mean, dude, you are staring at the perfect offseason where if you had to hit the reset button, Everything is aligning where you either call a team like the Rockets or you call a team like the Spurs and you get a ton of prospect back. For an organization, by the way, that is drafted terribly over the last 5 seasons.
100%.
This team, when they have been in the draft, has not done a great job of being able to build homegrown talent. This organization, and this is probably like due for another episode, but like this organization, you know how people say that Doc Rivers has been living off that one championship for like dang near his entire coaching career? This Milwaukee Bucks organization has been literally thriving off of two things for the last like 15 years. It's the development of Giannis Antetokounmpo, which primarily was done under the Jason Kidd regime, by the way.
Yeah.
And then winning the championship off of the trade that trade through acquiring Drew Holiday. If those two things don't happen, we are looking at the Milwaukee Bucks as an organization way differently over time in terms of the way they drafted, developed, free agency signings. This organization is not as good of a organization as people think. But because of Drew Holiday, Dante DiVincenzo, Damian Lillard, they look at those and say, Bobby Portis, Brooke Lopez, they look at them and say, oh, these guys know how to make little moves on the margins. No. This team has always operated at a loss.
Moves, Jay. That's the problem. That's why they did these moves, because they're not a great organization. They were lucky enough to freaking develop Giannis into a top 2 player in basketball. That's why they, with this whole like they couldn't draft, they didn't have any depth going forward because they can't draft. Because Marjan Beauchamp, they let go of Dante DiVincenzo. They did not make good moves around the perimeter of Giannis Antetokounmpo. So that's why they're like, you know what, F it. We can't do anything, right? We just have to keep him for as much as possible because nothing is going to be better than what this era is of Milwaukee Bucks basketball. If you tell me in 5 to 6 years the Milwaukee Bucks organization is one of the worst organizations in basketball, I would believe you because they dug themselves such a big of a hole. But they're living in the best time of Milwaukee Bucks basketball, and they're doing everything in their power to keep Giannis because they know anything post Giannis, whether they trade him for a haul or not, is going to be horrible for them. That's the problem with this organization. That it's like, again, it's a top problem, but because of what they're living off of and the fact that they have this superstar, they're like, you know what, F it. We just have to just throw everything we can at the board and just kind of have to live with it and just try and keep Giannis for as long as we can because that's the type of scenario they're in right now. They did these moves because they're desperate because they have nothing else. They have nothing else going for them.
Yikes!
It's a tough situation to be in, but at the end of the day, whether like after this whole Giannis era is done, what can they say about themselves that they had that they were able to win a championship and they were able to develop one of the top 20 players in NBA history? You can't go wrong with that. But yeah, Jay, like the Milwaukee Bucks, like I don't know what they're going to end up doing moving forward. But it's the same thing with my most questionable move, Jay, because the Sacramento Kings made one move this offseason, and that's just bringing in Dennis Schroeder. Jay, when you look at the lineup of Dennis Schroeder, Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, Keegan Murray, and Domantas Sabonis, does that team move you?
Nope.
Jay, I am more interested in the young prospects of this team when you look at a Nick Clifford, when you look at one of your boys, Maxime Reynaud, when you look at a Devin Carter. Because I'm like, what are you doing if you're the Sacramento Kings? If you're trying to be a cosplay of the Chicago Bulls West, just say that you're just settling for mid because that's what's happening with this team right now. Signing Dennis Schroeder, yes, you need some point guard play. Yes, at some point on this roster, you had Tyrese Halliburton and De'Aaron Fox, and now in 2025, you have Dennis Schroeder as your starting point guard probably of your basketball team. But they've just handled this situation so poorly ever since the De'Aaron Fox trade. Honestly, even if you want to go back and say that they made a huge mistake with the Tyrese Halliburton trade, I'm completely on board with you on that. But then this offseason, with the whole mess of them saying, oh, are we going to keep Malik Monk? Are we going to trade away Malik Monk? And just coming out of this thing and coming out of all that and just ending up just signing Dennis Schroeder and that basically being your offseason. And then you apparently were in talks for trying to sign Russell Westbrook. Like, come on now. Like, what are you doing as an organization? Like, honestly. And then, like, again, the only guys I'm really, like, excited for on this team, and I know there's a bunch of, like, all-star caliber, borderline all-star caliber players. Bro, I'm, like, watching Nick Clifford in Summer League. I'm watching Maxime Reynaud. I'm actually kind of intrigued with what they're what their future is going forward. I just hope they get the opportunity to actually like get some real minutes on the team. Same thing with Devin Carter, who I think is going to be a defensive demon at some point. But I just was hoping for them to give him the opportunities, maybe give him the keys to being the starting point guard eventually. But no, they just like continue to sign these veterans, a collection of them that are not going to like compute or compete to be some sort of championship team. Jay, this Kings offseason has just been just rough overall. And I like the whole like Nick Clifford pick from like the draft. I just don't like just the direction this team is going whatsoever.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing too was I think we saw a season ago when they went after DeMar DeRozan that there was already this weird boosted feeling coming off of making the postseason for the first time in so long, of
Yeah.
feeling like they need to seize the moment and build off of that in a way where now they're supposed to be taking a step forward as opposed to being able to stay steady within a Western Conference that's so competitive on a year-to-year basis. And I feel like going after DeMar DeRozan was like one of the original sins because you block off a guy like Keegan Murray, who's supposed to be a developmental pathway to being a lead three-way, 3 and D guard for you, and you block that off. You instantaneously block that off by filling his position with a guy who is going to play high leverage minutes, and you now slide Keegan Murray to either getting most of his minutes playing small ball 4, or you position him to being a guy who, when he does play the 3, he does not have nearly as many on-ball opportunities as he was supposed to have coming into that season. So you look at a guy like Nick Clifford, another guy who now is walled at that 2-3 position between Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan, as a guy who
Right.
his best attributes, besides the fact that I feel like he's a little bit of a Josh Hart type of player, his on-ball creation and three-point opportunities are the things that kind of bring like real diversity to what he has in his skill set. But those two things can't really shine next to two guys that thrive best as a slasher and a mid-range operator. And by the way, neither one of them are necessarily high-level passers. I think DeMar DeRozan has grown as a pass decision maker. I think Zach LaVine has grown as a pass decision maker. But
But they can't both be number one playmakers on your team. None of them can
no.
be.
And I don't believe that Dennis Schroeder steps in as a point guard that can fit that role of being a table setter for this team either. So now, Nick Clifford and Keegan Murray are automatically blocked off as in terms of what their individual development is. Let's not even talk about the fact that Malik Monk is still on this team, which is another guy from an on-ball creation standpoint, needs the ball in his hands. Now you've positioned yourself in a way where you're blocking your developmental pathway. And the team structurally that's blocking those prospects isn't good enough to be worth blocking the prospects, right? So this team is in a really, really weird spot. And I think the weirdest part for them is I think they didn't realize that the Western Conference is never stable. I think it's like I think that's the best way to phrase it, right? I'm sorry if that seems like way too vague, but the Western Conference is never stable. You can't have 1 year of light the beam and all these things like that and think that now you set a totally new precedent for what your franchise looks like. The Golden State Warriors were one of the worst teams in the NBA and picked second overall, right? And became a team that within 2 years after that won the NBA championship. The Oklahoma City Thunder were bad for 3 to 4 years with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander on the roster developing as an all-star caliber player. They just won the championship 2 to 3 seasons into having the second overall pick and a later lottery pick in Jalen Williams, both drafted in the same year. They're only a few years removed from that. The Western Conference, the Denver Nuggets went from a team that won the championship to a team that we were questioning whether or not their team was deteriorating so much that they were going to fall off and risk the rest of Nikola Jokic's prime years as an MVP caliber player. That's two totally different universes of the
Yeah.
Western Conference right there, right? And that goes to tell you that specifically in the kind of conference that they play in, the Kings, I think, are so like absent from the grand scheme of what the NBA picture looks like specifically in the West, that I think last year was a really good representation of how fast this league can move around teams and around players that think they're just going to be able to be in this position every single year. They say this about championships, right?
Yeah.
Winning and thinking or falling in the finals and saying like, you know what, I'm going to be back. And then you see a team like Boston, you think they're going to repeat. Not only does Jason Tatum go down, in the playoffs, they sell the farm. Drew Holiday gone. Kristaps Porzingis gone. There was conversations around maybe having to move Derek White, right?
Mhm.
All within the span of 1 year, the team got sold, right? This is in the Eastern Conference now. You go from
Yeah.
NBA champion to like, can they be a play-in team next year? Is what some people are saying.
This
All because of two
there's,
things that happened.
there's a reason why we have 8 straight years of like new champions. That's all I'm saying. There's
Yes.
a reason we have 8 straight years of new champions. Everything
Yes.
changes so quickly in the NBA.
And so I think the Sacramento Kings have positioned themselves to be a team that's going to be bad for another 4 to 5 seasons, unfortunately. And a team that we're going to look at that year where they made the postseason, they pushed Golden State, right, in the play-in tournament and all those different things like that. And we're going to say to ourselves, yo, that was a flash in the pan team. But you know who they remind me of? The D-Lo Brooklyn Nets. Like, that's what that Kings roster is going to go down as. And it's
Even
all
though
going to be because they had a formula that they were building toward, and they nipped it in the bud the minute they got the smell of something good. And now it's going to put them back a couple more years again.
it's crazy that you have like these three former All-Star level talents, and like that's probably good enough to be at best like the 10th or 9th seed in the Western Conference. That's what they're basically settling for if you're the Sacramento Kings. And I mean, they've been incompetent for basically our entire lives, Jay. It's like, and I think like you can kind of smell that incompetence like going forward, having that little bit taste of the playoffs, just that little bit of a taste, and just completely just like falling off a cliff. Again, you had two like top 10 point guards in the league, and like De'Aaron Fox and Tyrese Halliburton both on your roster at the same time, and now like 4 years removed from that, and you're starting Dennis Schroeder in 2025. I mean, it kind of just tells you all you need to know about the Sacramento Kings organization. That's all I'm saying. And I think that's just going to continue on going forward because they're one of those teams stuck in no man's land. I just don't think I just don't know like what the true path is going forward for this team and what out do they have here? Like you can see that with a lot of teams. I just don't see it here with the Sacramento Kings unless they completely tear everything down, which logically they should, but they're not. They're definitely not going to do that because they're the Sacramento Kings. Jay, next question. What has been the most underrated signing or move that has been made this offseason?
TV, cue the Tyus Jones rant.
Hey! Tyus Jones makes his return to the podcast.
Come on, man. This is the one right here, man. I mean, look, there's a handful of ones that I'm really interested to share. I think another one of them that'll come up as quote unquote underrated will actually be applied to one of the later topics that we talk about because I think it's underrated, but I think it's also going to make the team I'm going to talk about later on a little bit more exciting. But let's focus on Tyus Jones. This team needs one thing outside of three-point shooting, which they addressed, by the way. Jace Richardson, Desmond Bane, Tyus Jones. I think they addressed the three-point shooting acumen, right? I think that part got established. They need a table setter, bro. They need a table setter, bro. They need a table setter, and they need a guy that can be a backup point guard that can take 15 to 25 minutes a game and really be either a secondary guy as an on-ball creator next to Jalen Suggs or a guy who could take some of the pressure off of Jalen Suggs. You have to remember, Jalen Suggs played less than 50 games last year. This is an all NBA caliber defender that they missed out from last season. But the other thing that they missed out is 38% on 7 attempts per game. That's what they missed from Jalen Suggs last season, right? Tyus Jones has shown in the past, and I'm going to focus more so on the teams that he's been productive on where they've had real aspirations, right? So the Phoenix Suns, despite the fact that they underachieved in his time with him on the roster, but more so dating back to the time with the Memphis Grizzlies. This is a guy who could step in and give you 15 to 20 minutes per game and be a legitimate glue guy for your team. You have to look at what Tyus Jones brings to the table, specifically on a team like this one, too, right? He has rapport with Desmond Bane, who's already played with on a different organization in high leverage moments. He has a Duke connection with guys like Wendell Carter and Paolo Banchero that positions them in a real way as well. This is a team that desperately needs a table-setting point guard to help take some of the on-ball presence off of guys like Franz Wagner and Paolo Banchero as decision makers. They also need a legitimate three-ball from the backcourt in a real way, and now they have real depth at that position. Again, I mentioned beforehand, Anthony Black, Jalen Suggs, Desmond Bane, Tyus Jones, Jace Richardson. Like, you are now in a position as the Orlando Magic to have no excuses when it comes to having legitimate three-ball potential from your backcourt for an entire 40 minutes. For an entire 48-minute game for an entire 40 minutes to 48-minute situation, you are always going to have legitimate 3-point shooting on the floor. And the reason why I say 40 minutes is because I do know that there are certain iterations of the Orlando Magic where they play significantly bigger and play jumbo sets where Franz Wagner ends up playing point guard in some situations.
Yeah.
I don't know how much they're going to do that this season, which is why I might lean closer to 48 minutes of legitimate three ball potential from your backcourt. Because I think now they just have so much depth in the backcourt that they can rely on having one of Tyus Jones, Desmond Bane, Jalen Suggs, or a combination of these guys on the floor at all times, right? So you're going to have 48 minutes of legitimate on-ball pressure, three-point shot creation, table setting, and or the ability to move on and off ball in a way that opens up the floor for Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner. Tyus Jones is going to operate as this legitimate glue guy for this team, as also a veteran presence for a young squad that, again, has only gotten 2 playoff victories in their last 2 playoff series, right? That's another thing. So this is a team that has not had significant success in the postseason and has not been around postseason basketball enough. Tyus Jones has been in the NBA for 10 years and has been in playoff scenarios on multiple occasions. So this is a guy who brings real wisdom. He brings a real table-setting mentality to a team. He brings veteran leadership. And I think for an Orlando Magic team that, let's be honest, I think with the way the Eastern Conference looks this year, is probably the third best team on paper in the East going into next year. Does that feel fair?
Third, second, depending on how they look to start the year. But yeah, they're up there. They're not number one, but they're definitely like in that mix.
Yeah, they're not number one, but I definitely think they're in the mix for top 3, and you can make the argument between them and the New York Knicks. But if we're being real, this is a team that has real championship aspirations going into this season, and with the way they did things with the Desmond Bane trade, they've locked themselves into a roster for the next 4 years that's going to have to produce with the kind of price point they're paying out. Tyus Jones, I feel like, was a cheap budget option for, I believe it was $7 million. He's getting paid less than the Bulls paid Trey Jones.
Yeah, exactly.
Believe that. Like, that's crazy, right? But he's getting paid 1 year, $7 million to be a guy that I feel like can step in and be this legitimate glue piece for a team that I think has a real chance to come out of the Eastern Conference this year. So Tyus Jones, underrated signing, a dude who I think is going to be able to bring something day one to this team. And I wouldn't be surprised. I would not be surprised at all if he's a dude that we're having 6 man of the year conversations about. I don't necessarily know if he'll put up the numbers, but I definitely think he's going to be a dude that's going to contribute at a high enough level to be considered as such in the ways that like Alex Caruso of the past does, where the box score might not scream to you, but if you're talking impact, this dude should be in the combo.
No, I think like it sucks because like I think last year like Tyus Jones got a lot of slander there in Phoenix, but that was because of the whole like guard situation, the whole injury situation. Like it was such a mess there in Phoenix that like he was asked to do a lot more than he was asked to do. And I think now being here with the Orlando Magic, being probably the one like true, when you look at like true point guards on the roster, he's probably the best they got there. Knowing that Jalen Suggs, Desmond Bane are both kind of like combo guards at this point. So like him being the true point guard there, him not being asked to do like too much with like on ball like with being on ball, and like him like just getting those like spot minutes and being a backup point guard. I think you could see a real impact in terms of remember what he did with the Memphis Grizzlies, what he did with the Minnesota Timberwolves back in the day. You can get that impact now with him being on the Orlando Magic. I think he's a great option, and I think with the addition of Desmond Bane as well, having just two like multiple just new ball handlers in the backcourt to mix in with the Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner is desperately needed. And I think it was also a fantastic signing too. I think that was very underrated. Jay, but for myself though, one of the moves I really like from this offseason, and again, we love those low risk, high reward sort of moves, Jay. And for me, trading 2 second-round picks for Cam Whitmore if you're the Washington Wizards is a great, underrated, low-risk, high-reward move. Because this guy used to be in discussions for being, one of those, like, prospects that you wouldn't want to trade if you're the Houston Rockets. He has that on-ball creation. He has, like, great offensive ability. And someone who is potentially going to be one of those key pieces in the Kevin Durant trade. And now if you're the Washington Wizards, you're kind of just throwing darts at the wall at this point. You did have Trey Johnson on your team, but he is really, besides him and like Alex Sarr at this point, like those are your two like main staples of your team. And you're kind of just trying to figure out what you're gonna have in the perimeter. Yes, Bob Carrington is there. Yes, you got players like a bunch of the veterans. Now you add another young player in Cam Whitmore at the wing position, which you're trying to find a long-term solution for, and you're gonna give him some good minutes. yes, you're gonna have like Chris Middleton in that spot. You're gonna have CJ McCollum kind of operating in those 2-3-1 positions as well. But Cam Whitmore being there, is there a chance at a long term solution at the small forward position? Has the athleticism, has the shot creating ability? He could really be someone with a chance there in Washington. And now mixing with a bunch of veterans who can like help him like find his role in the league and find like what he's like and like really expand on what he's really good at. I think it's a great situation for him. And again, 2 second-round picks for a young prospect like him, you can't go wrong with that. I really like this move for the Washington Wizards.
Yeah, I think you also have to look at the way the Washington Wizards have compiled themselves, right? I think the mainstays, to kind of build off what you said, I think the mainstays of the roster, Alex Sarr, Bilal Coulibaly, Bub Carrington, Trey Johnson. I feel like those are the mainstays. But then look who's around that. Chris Middleton, CJ McCollum, Marcus Smart. Like, there's no real, like, solidified standard when you talk about looking forward for a young basketball team in that main fray of their roster. There's a real world where I think they flip CJ McCollum again. I think there's a real world where they flip Chris Middleton around the trade deadline. I think Marcus Smart could be a guy that's on the trade block before the summer ends. He might already be on the trade block and getting phone calls. But Cam Whitmore can come in on a roster, right, where I think as soon as next season, we might see a starting five that has Bob Carrington at the 1, Trey Johnson at the 2, Cam Whitmore at the 3, Bilal Coulibaly at the 4, and Alex Sarr at the 5, with Keyshawn George coming off the bench and Corey Kispert along with them, right? And that's a really good group. That's a really good group.
It's a nice young nucleus that they have now on this team.
Yeah. And then you look at the upcoming 2026 draft class, that joint is stacked. You might come in the next season and you can fully flesh out your situation by grabbing another player like AJ DeBonsa or Cam Boozer. Like, you have a position where you might be able to really like flesh this thing out even deeper, but you have a really solid young core structure with that group of 7 once you move Chris Middleton, CJ McCollum, and Marcus Smart out the paint. I think that's really important. And a player that I didn't mention that I also think is really intriguing for this Washington team is a player they actually got from Milwaukee, who we were just dissing a second ago, AJ Johnson, who's been really good in his time with the Wizards, both on the back half of last season and in some short spurts in Summer League. Like, he's a guy that I think is going to be really, really interesting. So they have a really strong group when it comes to young cores of guys under 24 years old. I think once they move off of guys like Chris Middleton, CJ McCollum, and Marcus Smart and fully commit to that youth movement, with Cam Whitmore being another addition to this group, they got something brewing, bro. And I like what they're doing. I think Washington is in a really good spot right now, despite the fact that they've been dealt some really bad hands in terms of where they've been drafting over the last couple of years.
No, I'm very happy with like where they are in like their position. Like as of right now, I mean, like yes, you have to. They're doing what a young team should do: take on bad contracts, take in some good draft capital, and with the amount, let's be completely honest, Jay. As much as like we want to say that this is part of the young team, we don't know who that number 1 guy is yet. We don't know what like the for sure untouchable core is. So this is your chance to kind of throw darts at the wall at these young players and see like what sticks, because you're in a place where you're like, well, nothing is sticking right now. We don't know what is like for sure here in Washington. So let's just keep trying to throw things, and then like this season, just see who's going to be part of this like long term solution, and if like Cam Whitmore hits, or maybe like Bilal Coulibaly is like the long term 3. At least like we got some we have some chances here to like and just like give these guys some opportunities. So they're doing what a young team should do. Throw darts to the wall, see what ends up sticking, taking on some bad contracts, potentially being able to move these contracts as well when they become expiring contracts at the deadline. They can like trade them for maybe like a second-round pick, or maybe take on some like other contracts where you can get some more draft capital. I like the direction that this Wizards team is going. It was a lot different a couple of years ago, especially when they're trying to build around Jordan Poole. But now I feel like they're in a much more clear direction, and I'm excited to see I'm excited for the 5-year outlook of this team more than anything. Yeah. And I think this is like the start of that like 5-year outlook, and just trying to see like which guys end up sticking.
Yeah. I definitely agree that the Washington Wizards are going to start being more involved in those conversations when we talk about best young cores in the league. I wouldn't be surprised if a season or 2 from now, we're starting to put them in that rankings a lot higher than we have in the past. They've drafted well. They're picking up young talent in a real way. They're acquiring assets in the form of first round and second round draft picks at a pretty high clip. And they do have veteran leadership on their team that not only can add to, helping develop these younger guys, but then you flip them later to be able to get some more pieces and make it even better. So that the Wizards are in a really good spot. Shout out to Michael Winger, who of course comes from a really good background with teams like the Denver Nuggets and the Oklahoma City Thunder, if I'm not mistaken, as two organizations that he's just been able to like really learn so much from. And now stepping into a situation where he can help do something different with Washington. He's building an East Coast team that desperately needed life. And this young squad, I mean, they're slowly but surely coming together.
Slowly but surely, you love to see that at least like at the start of a nice turnaround there over in Washington. Jay, let's move on. Let's move on to these final two. We went through a lot of the off-season like recap stuff.
Yeah.
It's time for us to be a little bit of predictors. We love to do bold predictions on this podcast. We like to do like kind of predict what's coming up next.
Yeah.
Jay, my question to you is, who is going to be the next big name player either being signed by a team or being traded? So like, what's the next like big move going to be made?
So my audible mention was Jonathan Kuminga because I think the situation with that is still going to be so untenable that I feel there's a world where he returns to the Golden State Warriors, but he comes on a contract that's going to be tradable, whether it comes in the form of a sign and trade or it comes within the form of them doing it in a way where he's still eligible to be traded at the trade deadline. I would not be surprised if Jonathan Kuminga by the NBA trade deadline this upcoming season is no longer a Golden State Warrior. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if before the offseason officially is over, that Jonathan Kuminga is already wearing a different uniform. That's my honorable mention. But the guy that I actually believe is going to be on the move and going to be on the move very soon is Bradley Beal. I know that it sounds very impossible given the fact that he has the no trade clause and the thoughts around waiving and stretching him and different things like that. But guess what? The Milwaukee Bucks, despite the fact that I don't necessarily agree with the way they did it, the Phoenix Suns are in a completely different situation when it comes to what they have to deal with when it comes to Bradley Beal. He has you guys in a chokehold in terms of the kind of flexibility he has because of the contract he has. And with that being the case, the best way that you can save yourself from those shackles is to do a similar thing to what you did with what you saw the Milwaukee Bucks do with Damian Lillard and just allow yourself the freedom and flexibility to let the situation play itself out. The Phoenix Suns, obviously bringing in Jalen Green, bringing in Dillon Brooks, have a way to fill that role in a real way by putting Jalen Green at the 2, letting Devin Booker play the 1. You allow Dillon Brooks to start at that 3 position, and you kind of build from there. Obviously, they fleshed out their center spot with what they did in the draft, as well as grabbing Mark Williams as part of that crazy draft bonanza that they had going on that afternoon. So Bradley Beal seems like a guy that's going to be on the move, but another domino effect of that is we saw what the LA Clippers did. The LA Clippers moved Norman Powell. They sent him to Miami. Obviously, the thought process there is that they're clearing up that space to be able to position themselves so that when Bradley Beal hits the market, they can sign him to a lucrative deal, and he fits right in at that 2-guard position next to James Harden, in between James Harden and Kawhi Leonard in a starting 5, where then you still have, I believe you still have Triple J.
Yeah.
Well, not Triple J, excuse me. But you still have Derek Jones, excuse me,
Yeah.
it was DJJ, excuse me,
Yeah.
and you still have Ivica Zubac. You had brought in Brook
John
Lopez.
Collins. Yeah.
You brought in John Collins this summer as well, right? So you're an LA Clippers team that kind of like shadow positioned yourself to be like, yo, when this happens, we're gonna be the first team in the fray to be able to make this move, right? Teams like the Minnesota Timberwolves, the LA Lakers have also come up as possible opportunities. That goes to show that if this guy does get waived and stretched, he is going to be well sought after on the market. And I think a lot of the reasons why point guards like Russell Westbrook and Chris Paul haven't been signed yet is because a lot of teams are trying to figure out what's going to happen with this Bradley Beal situation. Because I think a lot of people view Bradley Beal as a much higher commodity than the aging point guards in Westbrook and Chris Paul moving forward. So if he hits the open market via this wave and stretch routine, he's a guy that guys want to be at the front of the line for. And I think the Clippers are probably at the top of that group as a team that's positioned themselves to grab him when it happens. I think it's less of a if and more of a win when it comes to Bradley Beal at this point.
Apparently, on Tuesday, I think like something like some sort of like contract thing is gonna click in, and he's gonna be able just to get like it's going to like affect less of the cap of the Phoenix Suns. That's what I think they've been waiting. So don't be surprised if we're recording this July 14th. July 15th apparently is when this deadline is. So if he gets released July 15th, We talked about it here the day before, but
Mhm.
basically, yeah, no, I agree with the same thing. I had him as like the most realistic guy being traded. I'm getting moved. It's either going to be the Clippers or the Bucks, in my opinion. It's one of those two teams are going to end up like getting Bradley Beal. The Clippers, it just feels like they have already like an agreement in place. They're just waiting for the release to happen. But the Milwaukee Bucks are still in that mix as well. So I mean, I agree with you there. Is Bradley Beal considered like a huge name nowadays, especially a couple years removed from his like 30-point per game season? No, but at the same time, still a multiple time All Star. If the Clippers are going to continue to go for it, they're going to still they're still looking for that extra guard piece, especially now trading away Norman Powell. Bradley Beal
Mhm.
fits right in. So I agree with you there. He's probably going to be the next realistic move being going to be made. But Jay, I have a crazy theory in terms of like who's going to be moved next, and it's like kind of like I was thinking because last year, right, Karl-Anthony Towns got traded, and it wasn't like we saw that coming, but also it
Mhm.
happened like a lot earlier and like kind of crazy, especially knowing that the Minnesota Timberwolves went to the conference finals, right, and
Mhm.
they ended up trading Karl-Anthony Towns. So in a sense, it was a little bit out of nowhere, right? So I think that there's going to be a trade like that happening. Just something just out of nowhere later on to the offseason. Just we didn't see this guy getting traded at all. Like, obviously, like, not a lot of players are untouchable, untradeable. But I think, like, this guy potentially just out of nowhere, especially with, like, how things, like, how things are kind of played out the last couple of years, that this is going to be a real possibility. And then this kind of going to kind of be, like, the cat trade of this offseason. My
Okay.
prediction for that type of trade, Darius Garland. Potentially Darius Garland.
Breakdown,
I don't.
please.
Here's the thing, though. I don't know what the trade offer is. It's the same thing with the cat thing, right? We don't know what the
Okay.
trade offer is. We don't know what the team is. But the thing is, like, the trade just happened where, yes, the Knicks probably wanted to trade away Julius Randle. Yes, they were willing to give. Like, people were surprised they traded Dante DiVincenzo, especially because they brought in all of the Villanova boys that offseason anyway.
True.
But the Cavs have gone through Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell backcourt for a while now. I don't
Mhm.
think by any means Darius Garland is untradeable. I just have a feeling that there's going to be something that opens up later on in the offseason, kind of out of nowhere. Again, I don't know where. I don't know what the trade offer would be. But if I want to make a bold prediction, Darius Garland's going to get traded somehow. I don't know where.
Whoa.
But Darius Garland, that's going to be my bold prediction. I'm going to cover here. If Darius Garland gets
Okay.
traded, I'm going to say that that's like July 14th. If it happens at some point in an August, September sort of vibe, just know that I said that. I think that Darius Garland might be traded.
TV got inside traders, y'all. He not letting nobody know. He
No,
he
this is
know
all
he's
feeling, bro. This is all feeling. This is
he
all
know
this.
he know he on the move. He don't know where. He don't know how. He just know, bro, that Darius Garland looking for a new spot. Shout out Brooklyn, man. They got all these point guards drafted so they can send them to Cleveland, man. I don't know. Jeez Louise.
Yo, it's
That would be
just
nuts.
imagine that true. That's crazy. But I just have a feeling. I'm just saying, if there's going to be a cat trade of this year, I have a feeling it's going to be Darius Garland. Jay, time to move on to the final question of the show, and it's kind of like a two-parter. Jay, I'm going to throw it over to you. Name me one team that you're most excited for, and one team that you're kind of like least excited for, like most disappointed in coming off this offseason.
So the team that I'm the least excited to see is the New Orleans Pelicans. I think that goes without saying. Shout out my boy Derek Queen. That's my dog, Maryland guy, dude who's a big man. He fits that Nas Reed archetype. I've said that a million times on the podcast, and everybody knows. Two of my main guys I love shouting on this pod, Nas Reed, Tyus Jones, man. They're just staples of the podcast, man.
Yeah,
But so Derek Queen, he fits that mold, and he's a player that I really like, and I'm very fascinated with what he can be. But I mean, no DeJounte Murray. We got Jordan Poole now. We never know the health status of Zion Williamson on a season-to-season basis. I think that Trey Murphy is a guy that needs to be a dog lit off the leash to a certain extent. I think Herb Jones is a player I want to see on a high-level team. He's kind of just trapped in New Orleans because of the
I know he
financial
just re-signed a
security.
contract too. He just
Yeah,
re-signed there too. Yeah.
I think he's literally TV. I'm gonna be honest with you. I literally think Herb Jones is just trapped in New Orleans because of financial security, dog. I think he's a guy that's just a very frugal, humble dude that loves to play defense and shoot the three ball, and he doesn't matter. He doesn't care who he plays for as long as he's financially
And then
secure.
it's a tradable contract though. He could be, eventually. I'm
Yeah,
not saying right now it's gonna happen, but eventually I feel like he's
yeah,
gonna
man.
be
But
like
I think
fun.
I think this is a team that I just don't know what they're doing. I never really feel good with New Orleans going into any given offseason. They're letting the guy and Troy Weaver make decisions on the side. I've told this before. I feel like Troy Weaver is the Thanos / Ish Smith of the NBA, trying to go across all 30 franchises and ruin them from the inside. Like, I just don't know how to feel about the New Orleans Pelicans, and I think they're going to be really, really sketchy next season with what they got going on. They got guys I like, but not for this team. It's like how we used to talk about the Orlando Magic once upon a time when they had Aaron Gordon, Aaron Aflalo, Evan Fournier, and all these other guys, Nikola Vucevic, right? Where it felt like it was a team full of guys that like you would love to see play on other high leverage teams, just not play together, right? And that's what New Orleans
Yeah.
feels like for me in this situation. And then the team I'm most excited to watch next year, and this kind of goes hand in hand with what I was saying earlier about my underrated signing stuff. The Atlanta Hawks just hooped, man.
Okay, you know what's funny? That is my team too. That was
Come
my
on,
team
man.
too.
The Atlanta
That was
Hawks
my
just
team.
hooped, dog. Come on. You got a situation where you bring in my dog Nickeil Alexander-Walker as a backup point guard / secondary guard to play next to Trey this summer. Like, you put this upcoming season, you bring back Jalen Johnson, you bring in Kristaps Porzingis, you get off of what you
Clint
had going
Capella.
with Clint Capella. Thank
You get
goodness.
you get Luke Kennard too. Some more shooting for that team.
Yeah, like this team is just they did everything right, dude. They just did everything right. I'm gonna be honest with you. This is my theory. I think the Atlanta Hawks saw that first domino drop with Orlando making the move for Desmond Bane, and said, yo, wait a minute. This might be the summer to make a play. Like, this might be the summer. Because you look back at that 2021 playoff run to the Eastern Conference Finals, and we all looked at it as a flash in the pan season. We all looked at it similar to that year where the Portland Trailblazers made the Western Conference Finals and ran into the Golden State Warriors, right? That one year with Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum where they finally got over the hump but ran into Golden State. I think the Atlanta Hawks know they are that caliber team. I think the Atlanta Hawks know they're a good enough team to be in the Eastern Conference Finals with the right situation around what they got going on with Trae Young. And I think last season was a really good indicator that they know how to build around Trae Young now, right?
No, it's this, bro. I'm super excited for this team. I'm excited.
Yes, bro. Think about this, bro. There's a universe where we're going to see backcourt defense with Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Dyson Daniels jamming folks up in the backcourt with Jalen Johnson and Kristaps Porzingis or Onyeka Okongwu manning the paint. That's crazy work.
Jay, this is reminding me of the 2021 Hawks team, but just a complete shift in philosophy. Instead of being that offensive oriented team with, remember how how good Bogey was that year? That was when John Collins was at his peak and all that stuff. They just went with a defensive version now.
Yes.
Dyson Daniels, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, KP. Again, these are all low risk high. They added Mason Newell, who was honestly could be potentially one of those steals of the draft as well. Like one of those older rookies, but can make an impact right away. I'm just up and down this roster. I really like what the Atlanta Hawks have going on. And don't be surprised, Jay, if this team sneaks into another Eastern Conference Finals. We saw with the Indiana Pacers, depth is so key when trying to go deep into the playoffs because everyone ends up injured when you go into May, June, April time. Yeah. Everyone's injured in some sort of capacity. When you have these extra players on your team, when you have a deep rotation, that's when you're able to, more than anything, outlast people. So when you have when you bring in all these guys, if you're the Atlanta Hawks, you seem really confident, especially if you can have a healthy Jalen Johnson in your team. That could be a really good number 2 on the East. That could be a really good second option. So I'm super excited for this team. Really like their rotation. And I think, honestly, this is the best defensive team they've had around Trae Young. This is the best defensive team.
And TV, it's the team that maximizes the situation around understanding that Trae Young is just not going to be an average defender in this league at the point guard position. And
So
that's
you
fair.
overcompensate in other areas. So you
Yes, you
overcompensate. Yeah.
overcompensate in other areas, but you have a point forward caliber player in Jalen Johnson who dang near averaged 20 and 10 when healthy last year.
Yeah,
This guy was he was in
there's a
most
good
improved
chance.
player conversations last
Yeah,
season.
he could be a 20. He was basically averaging like 18, 8, and 5 last year.
Yes.
Yeah, and
This is a
he could be a 20, 10, and 5 guy next year, 100%.
yes, definitely can. Dyson Daniels brings elite on-ball defense. Was in DPOY conversation last
Yeah.
year and made All-NBA first team. Nikhil Alexander-Walker, we know what he has the capability of doing as an on-ball defender, and more particularly, we know what he knows how to do as an on-ball defender in tandem with somebody else who's also a ball hawk. We just seen him play with Jaden McDaniels for the last 3 to 4 seasons, and they were one of the best defensive tandems in the Western Conference. Now you put him next to another ball hawk who's just as versatile, I think, in terms of on-ball pressure in Dyson Daniels, and you give him Jalen Johnson and Onyeka Okongwu behind him?
Yeah.
What? Then you add a pick and pop big in Kristaps Porzingis, which, by the way, despite what anybody wants to say about what John Collins has brought as a three-point shooter over the last couple of years, John Collins was never the kind of pick and pop big that Kristaps Porzingis is. Period, point blank.
Yeah.
Which means Trae Young has never played with a high-level stretch big in his entire career. So not only does that give you a different look offensively, but it gives you a guy that you might be able to trust as a secondary offensive generator. He's never had another guy who could be that reliant on to be able to get buckets in an easy way, get buckets in a way that allows you to take some of the pressure off of Trae Young to be the offensive engine for everything for the entire game, right? And then you bring in a guy, like you said beforehand, as another three-point shooter. You add another three-point shooter in this situation, which they tried to get from Bogdanovich. They tried to get from Herter. They tried it in a million different iterations, right? Luke Kennard, I think, is just a steady hand, low value version of those guys who has a
Who's a
lot
better
less
playmaker?
pressure.
And he's
Yes,
a better playmaker than both.
who's a better playmaker and probably has a lot less pressure when it comes to name value to produce. I think he's going to be a guy that you ask to come in and be like what the Cleveland Cavaliers asked Sam Merrill to be. Just
Yeah.
let it fly. Just let it fly
Mhm.
and shoot our three-point attempts per game as a team up from 30-something to 40-something a game to let's get somewhere between 45 and 50 attempts because we're going to just let this guy come in and be a flamethrower and get 9 to 11 three-point attempts per game and just help stretch the floor in a real way, right? They did. And then you mentioned Asa Newell. He can be a backup center rim runner as a guy that fits well as an athletic big John Collins type next to Trae Young, right? They did
Mhm.
everything right, I think, this summer. And I think they saw what the Orlando Magic did. I think they see what happened with JT, what happened with Dame, what happened with Tyrese. And they say to themselves, yo, we've made the Eastern Conference Finals in duress situations before. Let's also factor that in, right? Regardless of how good the Atlanta Hawks think they are or whatever the case is, that 2021 run was all the dominoes falling in the direction that allowed the Atlanta Hawks to capitalize off of a situation within the Eastern Conference and simply maximize off of it, right?
Mhm.
This is just another season like that. And we saw the last time they were in that kind of situation, they made the Eastern Conference Finals. All I'm saying is they got a better team than that one, in my personal opinion, roster construction wise, with a better philosophy around Trae Young in the process, and an Eastern Conference that's probably under more duress than that year was.
And a better coach too. Don't sleep on
Don't
Quinn Snyder
sleep.
too. Don't sleep
Don't
on Quinn
sleep.
Snyder. I really like that too. And again, like I said, that was going to be my most exciting team too. I'm super excited for what they have to do. And in terms of the Pelicans, we talked about them enough. I swear, like even with the draft, we said how bad their offseason is going. They just continue to do that. I'm just like not a fan of what they got going on. So I'll talk about my least excited team, and it's not because it's going to be a bad team. I'm just like it feels like again one of those situations where everyone in their conference feels like it's getting better, and this team is kind of staying still. Jay, why come the only move the Warriors have done is just let go of Kevon Looney? Why hasn't any other moves have been done yet?
Isn't he on New Orleans too?
Yeah, I don't know. Okay,
Jeez.
this is another weird thing. just to add to the Pelicans being just like a super weird offseason.
Heaviest team in the league next year. Clock it now.
What is the Warriors' next move here? I know like they're waiting on Jonathan Kuminga, and I feel like that's going to be like the domino effect for everything. But from all reports, That's not going to happen now. Like, it feels like it's going to be like a re-sign situation, and then probably look at the January, February time again. Like, we're just going to be in the same situation that we did last January, where you're like, are you going to trade Jonathan Kuminga? Are you not going to trade Jonathan Kuminga? Are you going to trade away Moses Moody and all these other younger guys? Gee, this Warriors team. I know you got Steph Curry. I know you got Jimmy Butler, but do you have any other any more confidence, especially when you see the Rockets making the moves they're doing? When you see like all of these guys like feel like they're happy to go and say Warriors, and like you just have like a better outlook for that team. Like, what is this team like going into next season? They beat the Houston Rockets in the first round, get absolutely destroyed in the second round from the Timberwolves because of injuries, and nothing has changed with their roster.
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing. I know you're going to bank on a lot of development. Obviously, the Jonathan Kuminga trade is still looming over there. But what's next for this team? They literally have done nothing. If you look at every team, you're going to see departures, you're going to see some additions, you're going to see some moves made. Jay, the only thing they have on their thing is all I see here, Kevon Looney is left. That's it.
Yeah.
I just don't know. It's not, again, they're not a bad team. They probably might still make the playoffs, but I feel more confident that we're going to be a play-in team with the amount of like how much the West has improved than I am that they're going to be a for sure like playoff top 6 team, and they have Steph Curry. I don't know. I just wish like it's like that meme where you see the guy like with a stick like just do something.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
like
TV, in my personal opinion, with that, are the Warriors any different from what the Bucks are right now?
without at least they have like a for sure number 2 in Jimmy Butler. But besides that, I mean, yeah, no, it's not that much different.
But I would say the same way you say, if this team didn't have Steph Curry, I don't know what this team would do moving forward with the rest of the roster construction based off the fact of what they've done so far, which is absolutely nothing. I would say the same thing about Giannis Antetokounmpo, and the only saving grace for the Milwaukee Bucks is that they play in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah,
But I would say that similar to what the Milwaukee Bucks did with Miles Turner, I think that the Jimmy Butler acquisition was their last fire off. Because now
yeah,
they don't have too much more flexibility. And with this whole Jonathan Kuminga thing, not only is the re-signing going to be difficult, but it's going to still be untenable because even if they bring him back to potentially trade him later, you're going to have him for a portion of the season where he's still getting blocked minutes-wise by the fact that you have to have Jimmy Butler in the lineup. Which
yeah,
kind of goes back to our Sacramento Kings thing of like DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine blocking off some of the younger guys. Part of the reason that Jonathan Kuminga's trade value isn't higher, given the fact that his skill set and athleticism says he should be a guy that should be highly coveted on the trade block, is because we just don't really know who the hell he is as a player yet. We
yeah.
just keep getting snapshots of him, and you're going to keep getting snapshots of him if he's sitting behind Jimmy Butler and he's coached by a guy like Steve Kerr who doesn't believe in him.
Yeah, it's just like, I mean, like, you're gonna watch the Warriors because of Steph Curry. Jimmy Butler's always gonna be a fun time throughout the season, but it's just like this team who says that they made their last move, who says that their window was this next 2 years and that's it. Feels like they've just kind of accepted where they are at and just hoping that like they deal with the Jonathan Kuminga situation, and that's basically going to be their move. And it's like this offseason. It feels like this offseason is not going to start for them until January, which is like a super weird feeling. And you're just gonna have to like have this like looming cloud over them for the start of the year. And I don't like that. I don't like kind of like where this team is at. I see like all the teams in the Western Conference like as they get healthier, they get better, they're younger, they have a lot more promise. And this Warriors team, they have Steph Curry, they have Jimmy Butler, yeah, like they have Jimmy Butler, and it's not even like prime Jimmy. I mean, Jimmy had some like damn good moments in the playoffs this past year, but just like a lot of other Jimmy Butler seasons over the last couple of years ended with an injury. So yeah, I just like this season is based on is on the backs of 2 guys who have sustained multiple injuries over the last 5 years. They're on the wrong side of 30, and you just kind of have to live with it because the Warriors have no other leverage. They have no other flexibility, and that's a really unfortunate situation when you have someone like Steph Curry, who's one of the goats of our generation, and you can't really do much with it because you just kind of have to kind of just sit and relax there. So again, the Warriors are still going to be a fun team just because Steph Curry's on the roster, but the fact that they are legitimately, and I'm not good, guys. If you just look at the freaking transactions, it's literally just nothing on their page.
Right.
Like, they're just like, I just like have like no, the fact that nothing that they move like it just doesn't like change, like makes me feel worse about this team more than anything.
Crazy, bro. It'll be interesting to see where they fall in the Western Conference. Like I said, they remind me a lot of what's going on with the Bucks right now. They just don't have the pleasure of being in the East. And that's just what makes it even worse because that puts them in position where you don't have this ability to kind of just flounder around. and you kind of have to make moves. We just made the same criticism about the Sacramento Kings earlier. Standing pat in the West, that's how you end up in the play-in or worse.
Yeah. And the only team that can get away with this is the Oklahoma City Thunder, because you just know that they just have a bunch of draft picks like waiting up, ready to be, the next guys to build up their bench. So yeah, Golden State Warriors, show me something. It's been 2 weeks at the free agency and nothing has happened. But yeah, those are our most excited. This is the teams that we're most excited for, least excited for. Let me know. Let us know down below some of the other teams that we didn't get to mention, any of the moves that we didn't get to mention. Let us know in the comment section below. Jay, it's been another fantastic episode. Thank you guys for watching. What do you have to tell these beautiful people before we sign out?
Man, I hope you guys are locked in the Summer League. I plan on doing a video later on this week, kind of maybe a handful of videos depending on the circumstances, kind of going over some of the most interesting guys in Summer League that I kind of paid attention to prospect-wise, whether they're rookies, second-year guys, or just interesting dudes that I think would play relatively well. So be on the lookout for that. That might be later on this week just because I want a decent sample size. For example, one of TV's boys, Colin Murray Boyles, just debuted against the Orlando Magic recently. Played relatively well, not an insane game.
His defensive potential, though, you see it. You see his defensive potential. It's kind of
not an insane game, but definitely produced in the short amount of time that he was on the floor. So, but only one game so far in Summer League. We already got a handful of guys that got pulled. Starting with a guy like Cooper Flagg, who had a rough game against Bronny and the Lakers, but then has a big breakout game with 31 points the next game after, and they're pulling the plug on him already, right? So I'm going to kind of give this a couple more days and then maybe do a couple of videos reflecting on some of my more interesting players in Summer League. Be on the lookout for that. And some new series should probably start coming up now that NBA news is going to start slowing down a little bit. It's going to be a little bit easier to follow, but we're going to kind of put our own little twist on things to still keep you guys in the day-to-day know-how about everything going on in the league. Because at the end of the day, guys, the NBA never sleeps. The NBA never sleeps. So just because you think the big names have finally rested does not mean these organizations are done making plays. So we're going to be on top of all of that in terms of the social media stuff.
There's still a long. And like I mentioned, like I made that prediction for Darius Garland. I mean, like the catch rate happened like 4 days before the training camp. So you just know that anything can happen in the NBA, no matter one point of the offseason. By the way, so you speaking of Summer League, I just saw a clip on my phone of Johnny Furphy dunking on your team again. So you had Elijah Martin dunking on your team on Friday night. And now you have Johnny Furphy of the Pacers dunking on your team tonight. So
I'll have thoughts. It's like that. But yeah, man, just stay locked into the content. The short form content is coming. We've just been trying to build stuff in the background to try to get everything organized, especially with all of the news kind of hitting so fast with all these signings and trades. Like, hey, Shams told us it was going to be an active summer. Don't get me wrong. I wouldn't say it's been like grand master plan style. Like I think Shams might have drew it up, but we've definitely seen some big things happen. I think there's still time for some other crazy things to happen before training camp starts, as TV kind of alluded to earlier. So wouldn't be surprised, but stay locked in, man. The short form content is coming. Some interesting ideas for the pod is coming up. Stay tuned. We keep teasing the top 10 position rankings and the kind of overall position rankings across the NBA. That series should be coming very, very soon. That's one of our favorite summertime series every single off season. So we're just really excited for that to come along the pipeline as well. So just stay locked in, man. I'm not going to be surprised if, we start pumping out videos pretty heavy podcast wise, because it's just going to be, despite the fact that the news cycle is going fast, there's going to be a lot to be able to talk about in the NBA this summer with everything that's going on.
100%. And again, you're going to be able to tap into all of that by following on to Hit Your Free Throws podcast. Again, short form content, TikTok, Instagram. You can check out our individual stuff as well. Those could be found in the links down below. Just tap into the Hit Your Free Throws podcast throughout the entire summer, and you're going to be able to get the NBA stuff, the WNBA stuff, and just all things basketball throughout the summer. So be on the lookout for that. But yeah, thank you guys all for the support. Continue to support the Hit Your Free Throws podcast through all of our links down below. Jay and I will be back next week with another episode. Like we mentioned, top 10 position rankings are coming soon, so be on the lookout for that. And yeah, this is the end of today's episode. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you all have a fantastic day. This is TV. This is Jay. We're signing out. Peace.